Today's Total Soccer Show is brought to you by Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf provider for US Soccer and Major League Soccer. They're also the official sponsor of our Major League Soccer coverage. So if you would like more MLS coverage on the Total Soccer Show, I would encourage you to support our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves. You can go to Roughneck Scarves, RUFFNECK, scarves.com. And there you'll find US national team scarves as well as other national teams and loads of Major League Soccer scarves. So you can show your support for the team and show your support for TSS's MLS coverage at roughneckscarves.com. Use the promo code Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase. You'll get 20% off the already generously priced scarves at roughneckscarves.com. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and today I am not joined by Taylor Rockwell. Taylor is on his way back from New Orleans. He'll be back with me Tuesday to talk Champions League. Today I'm talking to Matt Doyle, the MLS analyst. If you've been a long time listener to our show, you'll know that we're a big fan of Matt's work, the way he looks at soccer. So we'll be talking to Matt today about Seattle's 4-2 win over the LA Galaxy, with a special focus on Jordan Morris and his role in that game, and on Jordan Morris's left foot. It does exist. We'll also be talking about the recently published 24 under 24. That's the recent list of MLS players aged under 24 who are the sort of the best and most promising in the league. If you're a fan of Orlando City or NYCFC or FC Dallas, we'll be talking about Cyle Larin, Jack Harrison and Kellyn Acosta. We'll also be talking about the relative lack of young American fullbacks and young American attackers. We'll get Matt's take on why he thinks that is the case and what can be done to solve that problem. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with the MLS analyst. So I am joined by Matt Doyle, the MLS analyst of MLSsoccer.com. Matt, thank you once again for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Can I assume that I am talking to you from the Analyst Den? Is that where you are?
You are correct. I try to never leave the Analyst Den, so it's like my fortress of solitude over here.
Does it have like a kitchen and a bed in there and everything? You can just stay in the Analyst Den?
It does. A kitchen, a bed, obviously a very comfortable armchair and a couple of affectionate cats. So what else could someone need?
So actual real life, do you watch games in there? Or is it sort of just where you go to record?
No. This is my house. I am a self-contained unit. I literally do not have to leave the house to do my job. Though I try to at least once a week, go out the front door. So we'll see if I manage it this week.
Get some fresh air.
Exactly.
So I know, thanks to my Twitter monitoring, that you were in the Analyst Den last night watching LA Galaxy lose at home to Seattle Sounders.
Yeah, that is a shock of a result. It's the first win for Seattle in LA since 2009, so it's been a little while.
And I also know, because I listened to Extra Time Radio, Thursday's Extra Time Radio, where you guys did a quick preview of that game, and you basically said it'll be a big surprise if Seattle wins this. And then we also saw Robbie Keane with that header early on from the Lletget cross. And it really seemed like this was going to be LA Galaxy all the way, right? Keane was just threading balls through to Dos Santos like it was the easiest thing in the whole world. And then suddenly it all turns around. So before we talk about specific players, I wanted to get your take on the shape of the game. How did that turn around so violently?
I think... I don't know what Brian Schmetzer gave them during the hydration break, which seemed like a very necessary thing. But the first 30 minutes it was all LA, and it maybe should have been 2-0. And Seattle came out of that break and just stomped the Galaxy. I think maybe he lit a fire under Ozzie Alonso, who had been thoroughly outplayed to that point. But whatever he did, it worked. And Seattle made a couple of plays and they absolutely deserved to win. But it was as extreme an in-game turnaround as I've seen in MLS this year, because first 30 minutes, it was all Galaxy.
So do you think maybe there's a chance that during those hydration breaks there's any sort of tactical tinkering? Because it's a decent amount of time. If Schmetzer has one big idea that he says like, oh, we should do this instead, it's just enough time to get that across, right?
I think there's probably something to that, but this looked more like energy and focus than it did like anything tactical. And sometimes, look, even great players, even guys who done this at a high level for a decade or more, need that kind of prodding. And I guess they got it.
And the man who really turned it around, I guess we have to say, is Jordan Morris. So he had that one goal where he sort of robbed Steres. I think Steres should report that incident to the police, to be honest. And then accelerated away from him and then finished with the outside of his right foot. So I was going to have this whole talk with you about whether the outside of Jordan Morris's right foot is as good as having a left foot. And then he scores that second goal with his left foot and kind of ruins it for me. So now I'm thinking of it and it was even like a composed, calm finish, right? Where he sort of cut and everybody went the wrong way and then he could finish gently with his left foot. So is this like a more complete performance from Jordan Morris, or am I reading too much into those two goals?
No, I mean, it definitely was a complete performance from him. And, you combine it with that header that he had last week on the game winner against Vancouver. And you're seeing, a young forward who's capable of hurting you in a number of different ways. I mean, and let's not forget, it was his vision that sort of started the sequence that led to that finish with his left foot. He lofted a beautiful little ball to the back.
Yes, it
was a Robbie Keane style pass to the back post if it was for Flaco Fernandez.
Yes,
so,
it was.
This was as complete a performance as I've seen from Morris, and it gives you a taste of, I think, his ceiling. Sort of holistically looking at this game, it was interesting because it was not. I don't think there was something structural wrong with the Galaxy in this one, and that's been a problem for them over the last 4 months. They've been on the back foot so much and giving up a ton of possession and a ton of shots and getting worn down. I don't think it was that from Seattle. I think it was just Seattle's ability to win those moments. Jordan Morris, his ability to win the individual moment, what was the separation between these two teams. And God, if you're a Sounders fan, that has to be music to your ears.
So the safe play with that first Morris goal would have been to just hold that ball up and wait for people to come join you, right? But instead, he just decided that he was going to try something a little crazy and try and poke it around Steres.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that if you ever see Jordan Morris deciding in those situations, boy, I should hold the ball up, then something has gone wrong with him confidence-wise. Because, I mean, he might be the fastest player in the league. And that is a weapon that he has to use, and he has to be vicious with it anytime he's in isolation, but especially against a center back who's 50 yards from his own goal. So it's, he understands what his strengths are still, and he's playing to that. And that's how games are won.
So before we move on to talk 24 under 24, which I'm really excited to talk about, I want to talk about a man who wasn't in there, I think because he's too old, Sebastian Lletget.
Yes.
Taylor Twellman was in the commentary, on the ESPN commentary, was really up on Lletget as this sort of holding midfielder and talking about how, Bruce Arena's got some big decisions to make when maybe Gerrard's fully fit and all that kind of stuff. And I wondered what your take was on Lletget, specifically as the sort of deeper midfielder instead of the winger that we've been used to seeing him as.
I mean, I was skeptical at first because I think he has trouble moving the ball quickly, right, at times, and that has continued at least a little bit. But the dude has 4 assists in 5 games since moving to central midfield, and he's also been a hugely positive defensive presence as well. To me, this looks like his spot. And I thought he was really good on the wing, but he looks much more natural as a central midfield and much more effective. And I mean, he's been better than Steven Gerrard has been this year, which, even though Gerrard is over the hill, that's still saying something.
Yeah, did you notice Gerrard kind of give up when that ball ricocheted off the referee and Ozzy Alonso was alive to it, and Gerrard just kind of stopped, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's had his moments. He's been pretty good on set pieces and another, a few other situations, but he's a negative defensive presence now, and we've seen it over the course of the league's history. Certain guys just aren't cut out to play in the heat on turf.
Oh yeah, it was 90 something, wasn't it, in LA?
So and I think that's going to be the story for Gerrard. I think this is, we're into the final month and a half of his career. I would be shocked if it was otherwise, and I think that's what he'll be remembered for with the Galaxy, which is, unfortunate, but it's a young man's game.
All right, speaking of young men, one final question on Lletget. There's the January camp roster is announced, and there's 23 names on it. There's 22 are named definitely. There's only one spot left, and it's between Sebastian Lletget and Christian Roldan. Who do you take?
Oh, I take Lletget.
Really?
15 times out of 10. I think Roldan is...
That's too many.
It's not. I think there's a huge gap between these two players. And look, Roldan is a nice player, but I mean, just looking at central midfielders born, U.S. central midfielders born in 95, which is Roldan's year. I have him behind Acosta. I have him behind Marky Delgado. I have him behind Emerson Hindman, Lyndon Gooch, who I think is really more of a central midfielder. Yeah. I like a lot of the stuff Roldan does. I don't think he's a national team caliber player, though.
Well, speaking of the future, one of the reasons I was really excited to talk to you is because the under 24 has been released. I believe it's the 7th. This started in 2010, right? This is where MLS and I think some like associated guys, right, will get together and decide on the best 24 players in the league under 24 years of age.
It is. Let me just clarify a little bit of the voting process.
Yeah,
it's not just the MLS. It's not just the MLS staff, the MLSsoccer.com staff. This goes out to, I think, somewhere around 24, maybe even a little bit more, independent journalists who cover MLS in both Canada and the United States, and maybe one or two who are based overseas as well. And those votes are tallied and weighted equally to the votes of the MLSsoccer.com staff. So this is not just MLSsoccer.com picking this list out. Just wanted to clear that up.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's important to clear that up. I guess that's to avoid any accusation of sort of bias, maybe, of the league promoting its own stars, kind of thing.
I guess so. I mean, that bias is always going to be there, no matter, or that accusation of bias is always going to be there, no matter what. But I think it's more just to give people around the league in one capacity or another a say on something that's kind of, honestly, it's kind of fun. So.
Yeah, I mean that's why I like it. So could you tell us a little bit about how it is decided? Like, I'm assuming you don't just write down your names 1 to 24 and hand them in, right? Is there more to it than that?
There are, I think, about a half dozen criteria that you base them on. There's, individual skill, athletic upside, tactical awareness, personality, which is one that people interpret different ways. Like,
is there any guidance on
that? In what sense?
In the personality one, does it mean just like, do you like it when you talk to this guy, or is it more like, does he have the personality to succeed?
I think that does he have the personality to succeed? Does he have the personality to be a star? Like to compare someone like Darlington Nagbe, who won it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He's 26 years old. He's still so shy, so soft-spoken, never imposes himself upon the people around him, and maybe it's linked, maybe it's not, never imposes himself on the game. Compare that to someone like Jack Harrison, who finished very high this year. He's outgoing and effusive. He's not arrogant, but he's certainly not shy. and every time he's on the field, he uses that personality, and he kind of shows it off the field as well. And so I think of it a little bit that way. The other thing I think about with regards to personality, someone like Juan Agudelo, who's maybe the most talented player on the list, is nowhere near the top of the list for the 7th straight year, because he just doesn't seem to want to push himself. And that is part of a player's personality as well. So there are a couple things that go into it. I'm not sure everybody uses the same rubric that I use, but it's, I think people put some thought into it.
So the top choice, the number one, was Cyle Larin, Canadian striker. Yeah. I guess I don't want to get too much in the weeds in terms of whether he should be 1 or 2 or 3, because I feel like it's just it's celebrating 24 guys basically, right? But can I assume that you're as up on Cyle Larin as everybody else seem to be?
I am. I think that he obviously his physical skill set is impressive, because he's he's big and strong and built like a tank, and he could score those goals. I mean, he scored some goals where he's just completely overpowered international caliber defenders. But he's got soft feet. He has the quickest, hardest shot in the league. He has scored, I want to say, 6 or 7 goals already over the past year and a half, where he just turns around. He gets the ball 22 yards out, turns around, and just crushes a stinger in the blink of an eye. No wind up, tons of bend on it. The type of goals that no one else in the league scores. David Villa doesn't score these goals.
No wind up meaning very little backswing, so you don't see it coming.
Correct. So defenders don't have time to close him down, and goalkeepers can't get a read. And if you talk to goalkeepers around the league about Cyle Larin, they'll say that's the toughest thing on him. When he takes a shot from 17 yards, you don't see it until it's on you. So you kind of have to hope that he either misses or he puts it right at you. The other thing is that he's improved again, and this goes to the personality thing.
Yeah.
Cyle Larin's much better at holding the ball up, and much better at connecting passes than he was last year. So he does check all the boxes for the most part. I do worry a little bit that he's maybe too nice of a kid, and this is something that you'll also hear if you talk to people around the league, that he's such a kind of a teddy bear. And that's not what you think about when you think about a striker, right?
Right. You want him knocking people over, sort of.
Yeah. And so there are some reservations in terms of that, but in terms of productivity for his age and for his experience, he has blown away every note on the record book. It's basically just his name now for first-year players and for second-year players.
So Orlando fans will obviously be really excited to hear you talk about him in such glowing terms. US men's national team fans maybe not so much, because he's definitely Canadian, right? There's no change in that.
Correct. He's played in Gold Cups and World Cup qualifiers, and he's a true Canuck. I don't know how
no Sidney LaRue situation can happen here.
That's correct. And I don't know how much longer Orlando City fans are going to get to be excited about him, because if I were to guess, I would say that there will be a significant offer for him this January, and MLS is still a selling league. So if the offer's there, you kind of have to take it.
Well, speaking of US national team, how about Harrison? So you spoke kind of glowingly about him earlier. I'm interested in this idea that he's possibly going to take US citizenship and possibly be eligible for the US national team. Is that just a thing that fans are excited about, or is that a thing that is actually being discussed?
I think that it's years away. The U.S. citizenship process has grown much more, grown into something much more Byzantine and intricate over the last 15 years than it ever was before. And you have to meet certain eligibility requirements. You can kind of speed it up if you get married, but like even Dom Dwyer is not a U.S. citizen yet. Right. And I think he moved here in 2009, and was married a year and a half ago and has an American kid and, American wife, obviously. So and that's like the fastest time frame. For Jack Harrison, unless he started the process literally when he got here at age 14, I think any hopes for him being on the U.S. national team, you shelve those until next decade at least.
So they don't take sweet crossing into account?
They do not, unfortunately. Though I will hope that whoever the next president is does take that into account.
So Jordan Morris came in at number 3. We've already talked about Morris sort of in detail, but it seemed like kind of a big deal for it originally seemed like a big deal for a rookie to land at number 3. But then you think about the profile that Jordan Morris has got, and it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. Oh, and not just the profile, but the productivity.
Yeah.
He's
12 goals now, is that it?
12 goals, he which is the second most in rookie history, behind what Cyle Larin did last year, and 6 game-winning goals, which is the most in rookie history, and leads the league this year. And he's got 3 or 4 assists as well. He absolutely deserves that spot in the top 3, and I think that. Look, he looks to me like the type of guy who can score 15 to 20 goals in this year, in goals per year in this league for a long, long time.
So Matt, I'd heard you talk on Extra Time Radio about your reaction to this list. And the one thing you noted, actually 2 things you noted were the lack of fullbacks, specifically American fullbacks. And you saw this as sort of a bigger problem that the US national team has. Yeah, I mean, I just want to get your reaction to that. Like, which fullbacks do you see on this list? I'm looking at maybe Keegan Rosenberry.
Yeah, I think is he the only one? I think he might be. I know Brandon Vincent, who's been pretty good for Chicago this year, actually missed the list.
Right.
And those are the only 2 really young ones that I can think of. Who?
I mean, Matarrita's there, but obviously he's Costa Rican.
Right, he's an import, and Elvis Powell probably should have been on the list, and he's an import as well.
I read that in the comments underneath 24 under 24.
Yes, you probably did. Those might have been some angry Timbers fans, but regardless, for whatever reason, no, I'm not going to say for whatever reason. For a very good reason, fullbacks develop later in the U.S., and it's the reason is this: in youth soccer. Most coaches will take their best player and play him or her at the highest leverage position on the team.
Right.
And in our game, that's still central midfield. So DeAndre Yedlin, until he was 17 or 18 years old, played central midfield. Keegan Rosenberry, until he was 18 or 19 years old, played central midfield. Brandon Vincent was a little different. He played central defense. But still not playing fullback at a crucial developmental time, and that's part of that's one of the things that the academy system is trying to fix. Because if you get the best, 50 players in a given age group in Greater Philadelphia into your academy, well, suddenly the real central midfielders are going to stand out. And then you're moving a Keegan Rosenberry to fullback at age 15 or 16 instead of 18, 19, 20. And that's one. Look, it's a work in progress. As with everything else in U.S. soccer, it's a work in progress. And that needs to happen, I think, at the youth levels before it can happen in earnest at the professional in the professional ranks.
As far as you know, is that happening, or is that just sort of what you'd like to see happen?
Oh, it's for sure happening. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the most promising fullback in U.S. youth soccer over the last couple of years is a right back named Matthew Olasunde from the Red Bulls Academy, and Manchester United were so impressed when seeing him play at fullback that they signed him the moment he turned 18. Even though the Red Bulls were offering the same. And we're seeing it with FC Dallas as well. They have a right back named Reggie Cannon who's playing for UCLA this year, and I think they're going to try really hard to sign him in January, and he'll probably walk in as a starter next year.
Reggie Cannon. Okay, I'm just repeating that name for our listeners so they can take note.
And they have a left back as well, I think, at SMU. So they the smart academies are working on this, and the smart coaches will find minutes for these guys.
Speaking of FC Dallas, Kellyn Acosta to me is a really good example of someone who is succeeding in central midfield for Dallas, but when he goes to the national team, he ends up playing left back with a right foot. And that seems to be like a really good sort of a big picture sort of summary, a small picture summary of what you were talking about with your best midfielders then going to a higher level than being put at fullback.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little weird with Acosta because he's always, for whatever reason, U.S. Soccer has always seen him as a fullback. Yeah. Whereas FC Dallas has always seen him as a central midfielder. So they're kind of, the team in the national program are the club team that is in the national team program are working at cross purposes here with Acosta, and I'm not eager to try to read too much into it because with things under Jurgen Klinsmann are always really tough to predict, and it's always really tough to understand the logic or the rationale. So you just kind of throw up your hands and hope that things have a way of working themselves out.
Well, do you see Acosta as someone who can capably play fullback at sort of MLS level or national team level or any other level? Or do you see his future as a sort of box-to-box midfielder?
Oh, I definitely see him more as a box-to-box midfielder. I mean, he could give you a couple minutes at fullback here and there. He's not a complete disaster, but he's a game changer in central midfield. If you look at players age 21 and under in this league, Kellyn Acosta leads those players in assists, and he does it from a spot that's not necessarily an attacking spot. Right. Obviously he is the amount of ground he covers defensively in that number 8 role, he reminds me of Jermaine Jones. His ability to play the ball with either foot. He's much better at receiving the ball in traffic than he was a year ago, and is improving still upon that. To me, it's just he looks like a number 8, and I think it's weird to play him anywhere else.
Yeah, we had a recent thing on the Total Soccer Show where my co-host Taylor and I, independently of each other, had sort of come to realise we both kind of suddenly loved Kellyn Acosta and wanted him in every US national team. I think it was mostly just watching him play a couple of games for Dallas. We saw the US Open Cup and a couple of league games as well, and suddenly we sort of saw what everybody was talking about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always jump out at you, but then you look back, you go through your mental checklist and you realize he's done the last 17 things that he's done on the field were all the right thing. And when you have that kind of consistency in that type of athletic package, frankly, because that range still does matter. It's tough not to be excited about that.
One other thing I heard you talk about on Extra Time Radio was the lack of sort of creative talent that you saw, American creative talent specifically, not making it onto this list. And I noticed that you kind of got shot down on your own show there. So I want to give you the chance to maybe talk about that here instead.
Yeah, I just think it's. I think there is a cultural bias against American attacking players.
Right. Where's Tommy Thompson? That's the question, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's the best example, but for sure you can mention that. But and I'll say Canadian players as well. On a per minute basis, there hasn't been a better playmaker in the league this year than Jay Chapman, and he's maybe a starter for Toronto, and we see it in other spots where Kellyn Acosta or Kellyn Rowe rather is only now at age 24, almost 25, playing in a more natural central attacking midfield role for New England. Tommy McNamara didn't even come onto the scene until he was 23 or 24. And then look at the older generation, guys like Lee Wynn, Benny Feilhaber or Sasha Kljestan. Nobody in MLS gave them the keys to the car until they were in their late 20s or early 30s. And this is something that Kljestan talked about with Jeff Carlisle of ESPN FC last week. There's a good article on it there, that there aren't enough players, or there aren't enough coaches rather, who are willing to take a chance on a young domestic attacker. And, there's a lot to unpack as to why that is. But it's certainly, God, Patrick Mullins is only now at age 24 and a half an MLS starter. But somehow this league hires people who think it's a good idea to give DP contracts to the likes of Nelson Valdez and Kevin Doyle and, Kennedy Iguananike, guys who are, again, replacement level players.
Do you think the problem is that it seems to me more money gets spent at the attacking end of a roster, and then once you've spent the money, like whether it's a DP player or like a $200,000 a year player, once you're spending the money, this sort of you're sort of obligated, or you think you're obligated to use that player at the expense of a younger guy who's earning $50,000 a year. Say you can afford to not give him minutes, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's part of it. But and that's something that structurally, with the way the salary cap works, it sort of lends itself to overlooking American talent. But I would hope that as the days and weeks and years go on, that MLS teams get better at scouting locally and get better at trusting the own talent that we produce. And to that end, that's why it's exciting to see a team like DC United, which has, in large part, kind of done that, play so well after trading for a guy like Mullins, who should have been a starter in this league 4 years ago.
Right.
So it just takes longer.
So final thing I want to ask you about, Matt, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, is the technical staffers' comments that are under each of the players' profiles in the 24 under 24. And I've realised after reading through this over the weekend, that was my favourite part, because it seemed like you were getting sort of insights into what people around the league think about each player. And I think, like, for the type of people that listen to Total Soccer Show, I think they're very much the type of people that are into your philosophy of learn the game you love, you know what I mean? Like, get to know how soccer works. To me, it was fascinating to read those takes. But I was wondering, were those guys deliberately anonymous? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, I didn't have anything to do with that this year, but when I did it last year, I have a list of a few dozen guys that I know pretty well around the league, and that I can call and get anonymous quotes like that. And obviously, they're not going to give you the quotes if they're not anonymous, right?
Right.
So that's how it was done last year. I assume that's how Ben Baer, who ran it this year, I assume that's how he did it. And I agree. Some of those quotes were fascinating. And if you look close enough, you'll see that a number of them were fascinating for the wrong reasons. There were some absolutely terrible scouting reports, including like the ones that really stood out to me were the reports on Harrison and Diego Fagundes. I think that those were so bad. Not the whole thing, but one of the paragraphs in each of those were so bad that I kind of think whoever the technical staffer was who gave those reports maybe even gave false info. Because for whatever inside baseball reasons. So it's fun to read those. I found it to be interesting on a lot of levels, for sure.
Can I take a guess at what you meant with the Harrison comment? Was it the thing about he's got to know when to do it and when not to do it?
No. Okay. It was the thing. It was the thing about the combine. Jack Harrison didn't play at the combine.
Oh, it's that much of a basic error.
Yeah. It was like to me, that was kind of a red flag to see that one. And then the one on Fagundes, I'm furiously searching to try to find it. Okay, this is the one on Fagundes that jumped out at me. Incredible skill, incredible technical ability, and it's probably different than your typical. And I know he's got some Uruguayan in him, but he's different than your typical American kid. He'll go at you 1v1, and if you stop him 9 times, he's going to go to the 10th time. That's not Diego Fagundes' game at all. He's not a 1v1 player at all. He's actually really bad at it. His whole game is pass and move. He wants to play quick combos around the box in tight spaces, get the ball off his foot, and then get it back in a place where he could take a touch and just have a shot. He almost never goes at defenders 1v1 because he's about as good at it as I am. And I am 40 and bald and sitting in an armchair right now. So seeing some of these reports, it cracked me up because I think some of these guys were playing games.
So you think there's a bit of misinformation in there, maybe?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But I don't want to take away from the idea that, to me, they were fascinating to read, just to get everybody's, I'm assuming by technical staff we mean coaches and assistant coaches, just their take on the young players of the league.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% agree with you.
Maybe we could do like a Matt Doyle annotated version where you point out the things you disagree with.
That might be a good column. I might do that.
For 2017, I think they should do that for 2017. Matt, thank you for taking time to talk to us today. I very much enjoyed it. And once again, I'd encourage people, go look at the 24 under 24.
All right. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you once again to Matt Doyle for taking the time to talk to me today about LA Galaxy versus Seattle and about the 24 under 24. I've put a link to the 24 under 24 list in the show notes of this episode. If you can't find that, then just go to MLSsoccer.com and you'll find it there. Thank you also to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring this episode and our MLS coverage. Once again, you can go to roughneckscarves.com. That's Roughneck with 2 Fs. You can find any US national team scarf or MLS scarf, and you can use coupon code Total Soccer Show, all one word, for 20% off. Last but not least, thank you to Mesut Ozil for lighting up my Saturday afternoon with that performance for Arsenal against Chelsea. That spin and turn on N'Golo Kante for Ozil's goal is one of my favourite things that happened this weekend. My joint favourite thing, or second favourite thing, I guess, if you can find the highlights of Koscielny and Mustafi dealing with Diego Costa. It's a 2-minute video that's on our Twitter timeline. Koscielny and Mustafi up against Diego Costa. That is a work of defensive beauty. Please take a look if you get a chance. Taylor will be back with me on Tuesday. We're going to watch Borussia Dortmund host Real Madrid in the Champions League. Christian Pulisic may be involved. He may not be involved. Either way, it's going to be an exciting game. So look out for our review of that game Tuesday afternoon. Speaking of Tuesday is National Voter Registration Day. We've had a listener who has asked us to remind you that Tuesday is National Voter Registration Day. If you want to be part of the 2016 election, go get yourself registered to vote. Thank you for listening and look forward to talking to you again on Tuesday.